On September 28, 2022, Hurricane Ian ravaged Florida's southwest coast. This storm made history as the deadliest to hit since the Labor Day hurricane of 1935, fifth strongest in the U.S. with gusts up to 200 miles per hour, and one of the costliest at $65 billion estimated infrastructure damage. This hurricane couldn't break the spirit of Boca Grande, and the community rose up together to rebuild and help those in need. The Ian Project was born to collect the stories of Ian's impact on Gasparilla Island and its people for generations to come.
Emergency services, what's your location?
My trailer's got thrown.
Okay, listen. No, we don't know what to do. Alright, if nobody can come right now. Ma'am, there's 10 of us in here and the roof is gone. 10 adults or 10 children? Who's in there? There's 3.
September 27 of last year, 2022, Boca Grande Fire Department, as well as the community of Boca Grande, were preparing for a direct impact from Hurricane Ian. Evacuation orders had been given by the county of Lee and Charlotte to evacuate the low-lying barrier islands and the flood zones of the west coast of Florida. So, following that protocol, we, the Boca Grande Fire Department, prepared to evacuate, gave everybody chance, time, ability to get off the island. We waited as long as we can, and then we actually left the island as well on the 27th of September. We went into Norport because we thought that would be the best place to shelter in order to get back to the island in a quick and efficient manner. The storm came in on the 28th of September, as it did the entire coast of west coast of Florida, southwest coast of Florida. Did a significant impact to the island and to the structures and the infrastructure on the island. We were able to get back out to the island the morning of the 29th, the Friday, and we began our recovery and search and rescue operations and missions and assessment of damage. Since that time, we're 5.5 months, nearly 6 months past storm. So there's a lot of lessons that we continue to learn and we continue to decipher and disseminate. The biggest thing is with us, with the station here, our building took a significant amount of damage, far more so than we had originally discovered post-storm. As time goes on, things have melted down that got wet, that didn't die off in the beginning. So we've lost a lot of systems with the station, computers, phones, things of that nature. So we're still assessing damage, repairs, and that's going to go on for quite some time. Actually, we're finally getting the roof back on. We should be done with the roof and securing that within the next couple of weeks. Part of the process after the initial search and rescue, clearing the roads, helping with debris removal, the things of those nature, the things that we have managed to learn, address, and approach was just the overwhelming amount of debris that was on the island from the storm, the vegetation and the trash and the building debris and all of that, which it took a while to get done, but we worked with the county, the community worked with the county, and we were able to get that done.
September 28th changed most of our lives. You know, we had a few days to prepare. The weather forecasts were showing the storm to go north of us, so we weren't positive until probably the Sunday or Monday before the storm, and the storm hit on Wednesday the 28th of September. We got as much done before the storm as we could possibly, moving furniture and moving, you know, things that could fly away. I think we just didn't have as much time as we would normally may have had, because they did predict the storm going north. So we got as much. We were closed for the season anyway, so most of the furniture and lawn chairs and beach chairs and umbrellas were already inside. So we did have to the inlet and the outlet and put that furniture in. But in general, we were pretty prepared anyway, because we were closed. So the storm hit on Wednesday. You know, no employee was on island, so we were just getting mixed reports. We got back on Thursday morning, and there was significant damage to the roofs, wind-driven rain inside of the building. The property, the landscaping, of course, as everybody was in the same boat, was pretty destroyed. But the inn itself, the 63 rooms in the inn, did pretty well. All but 9 rooms had some type of damage, some type of water damage, but not significant structural repair was needed. It was drywall, windows busted out, some furniture damage, but that was pretty limited. The roof on 323 was removed by the storm, and it unfortunately, wind-driven rain came in, went down to 226 and 227 and down to 118. We hired outside the geographic area, so we could not take resources from families and homeowners of the island and Englewood. The inlet did take some damage, but within a few days we were able to move some families into the inlet and house workers and families in the inlet. So one of our first things to action was make sure everybody was safe and make sure everybody was in a safe place. And the inn fed, did a community meal that week after the storm. We did it in the back parking lot. We had generators run the kitchen, so we were able to, all the food was, again, we were closed, but things we had in the freezer and things we could get in, last minute, we were able to cook and feed. We fed about 225, 250 people a night that week, and did it in the back parking lot, and gave some people some relief and make sure people were eating. And that went for our employees as well. We wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of.
How far in advance do you start planning for the hurricane?
So in the case with Ian, as early as 9 days out, computer models were hinting at the possibility that we could have a tropical system impacting the state of Florida, and not only could it be a tropical storm, but could even be a hurricane. So 9 days out is when the tentative alarm went off. And then once we had about 5 days out, computer models continued to narrow in on the state of Florida, and that is when that National Hurricane Center forecast cone that you oftentimes will see, that's when it was issued. Now, once we hit, now Ian made landfall on Wednesday. It made landfall on a Wednesday, but it was Sunday, so 3 days prior, that we started to know that this was going to be our storm. And also to the likes of which that we have not seen in years, if not decades. And it turned out that Ian was, to this day, the strongest that we have seen in Southwest Florida in recent memory. So even with the floodgates, we unfortunately had, through our foundation, water was seeping in, and we had about 1 to 2 feet in the building, leading to extensive damage. And the price toll has been fairly hefty, But just like it has been for other communities in Southwest
Right.
Florida, just because we're a TV station, we're not immune
Right.
from the impacts of this powerful storm. And whether it be our flooring, our electronics, basically everything below 2 feet was impacted in this building.
So while that was happening, and when you realized that you probably wouldn't be able to broadcast from the studio, you had an alternate plan where you went to another medium. You went to Facebook and the news, so people could still be informed about what was happening in their communities.
That's right. So when we lost power, we then activated the generator. The problem is Ian then impacted our generator, and we were not able to get it back up and operational, meaning we couldn't broadcast on the radio, we couldn't broadcast on TV. So then you think of the next best thing. And the thing is, during Ian, there were also a lot of people that were out of power and they weren't able to
Right.
view TV anyway.
Right.
So sometimes Facebook is one of the best ways to reach out because you're still using the power and the battery on your phone.
Right.
Now you want to use it for critical situations, but
Right.
what we did is we broadcasted in the building when we lost TV and radio capabilities, and we broadcasted on Facebook. And that's something that is a way to get out information that we couldn't do
Right.
30, 40, 50 years ago, and even as early as Charlie. Ian was, and this is what I've said oftentimes, is Ian was Charlie's bigger, badder brother. And not only with the heavy rain, 27 inches in Grove City in Charlotte County. Winds officially 140 that I have actually documented in Cape Coral. National Hurricane Center has it at 150 at landfall near Cayo Costa. And then when it came to storm surge, 15 feet for Fort Myers Beach, 12 to 15 for Sanibel. We didn't see those type of surge values with Charlie. And the reason why Ian was just an absolute devastating storm, the third costliest on record, over 113 billion, has to do with the fact that this was a slow mover, it was big, and it was in the worst possible landfall location because of the motion around Ian. So, for example, in the northern hemisphere, hurricanes, they rotate counterclockwise. So wind is a force, and it was forcing the water up towards highly and densely populated areas, Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel. Now, let's say if Ian went 50 miles down the coast, that worst part of the storm would go towards rural Monroe County. There are more snakes and gators there than there are people. And obviously that would lower the storm's overall impact. Well, with Ian, that was not the case. This was a worst case landfall location in northern Lee County, and it pushed all the water up the Caloosahatchee.
When Hurricane Ian made its relentless arrival in Boca Grande, Florida, residents found themselves facing one of the most devastating natural disasters in recent memory. This tranquil coastal paradise, known for its idyllic charm and vibrant community, was suddenly plunged into chaos as the fury of the hurricane ravaged the once peaceful street. As Hurricane Ian approached the shores of Boca Grande, anticipation mingled with anxiety. The storm, classified as a Category 4 hurricane, crescendoed with increasingly ferocious winds and torrential rain. Boca Grande's proximity to the Gulf of Mexico made it particularly vulnerable to Ian's wrath. Waves surged, crashing against the shoreline as the powerful winds ripped through buildings, felled trees, and shattered windows. In the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, the once picturesque landscape of Boca Grande was transformed into a surreal tableau of devastation. The local population was left grappling with the enormity of the devastation and the challenging task of rebuilding their lives from scratch. While Boca Grande's physical landscape may have been battered, the spirits of its residents remained steadfast.
Hi, I'm Wesley Locke. I grew up in Boca Grande my whole life. After Hurricane Ian came through, I got some calls from Captains for Clean Water saying that they couldn't get a hold of anyone in Boca Grande. So as soon as I could, I got over here, and they've sent, I think, 6 supply trucks now to have a relief station here with we have food, we have personal health, we have cleaning supplies, tarps, dog and cat food. We have all sorts of stuff that they've donated, and they'll continue to donate as the needs evolve. We'll have more cleaning supplies as people get their power and water back. But it's down here at the Crennenshield Community House parking lot, as well as the potable water and the shower station, and we have a couple porta potties as well. So please come. This is for people working out here, for your families. If you need a snack or just some cleaning supplies, it'll be here and refilled weekly. You can always talk to Gary at the Chamber of Commerce. He'll also be coming in and out of this area. But we want to say thank you, Captains for Clean Water, for loving our island. We've already got over 100 gallons of gas over to Little Gasparilla. Thank you to Sandy Melvin running around, Gary, the fire chief, the police department, everybody. And thank you to Island TV for covering this. It is so hard to see home like this, but we will rebuild and it will be stronger. And this community is absolutely unbelievable. I couldn't be prouder to be from here. And this is here for everybody. Yeah, thanks.
First of all, let me tell you, I never intended to stay here for the storm. The night before, we looked at the wind forecast, and it was supposed to be 30 miles an hour at 8 o'clock in the morning. So my aide, Sharon Campbell, who works with me, was going to come here, pick me up, and take her to her house. Unfortunately, at 7 o'clock, the winds were 75 miles an hour. So there's no way she could get her car over the bridge. She'd end up in the water. So I had all my hurricane screens down. If you see the one behind me, that got stuck. So had the wind turned to the west, I would have been completely decimated. Interestingly, I was very lucky. Having stayed here, I had leaks under the bedroom window there and the bedroom window over there. But there was a bad leak there. I could hear water gurgling. I took a bunch of towels and just threw them down. And by the time Sharon got here the next day, everything was dry. The towels were wet, but the floor was dry. I will tell you that my children were upset, to say the least. I had no way of contacting them. Our cell tower had blown down. They had no idea how I was doing. They knew I was here, and they were very worried. My son got a hold of an individual who lived in Tampa, and he was coming down here to check on his parents' house. So he convinced the person to come and check on me. Now, that was no easy task. You had a hard time driving up to the gate of the Boca Grande Club, and you couldn't drive a car because there were so many trees across the road. So he had to walk down here, and I must admit at 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon when I heard someone knocking at the door, I was absolutely surprised to find it was this individual that my son had contacted. So at least we got the kids felt better. They were still mad, but they felt better. During the storm itself, the most remarkable thing was when the eye came over. The winds dropped from 150 to 160 to next to nothing. Sun came out, and it was a big eye. Apparently, all of Irma could have fit into the eye of the storm. It took over an hour and a half to pass, but when it came back, you've heard the expression, it sounds like a freight train. Well, that's exactly what it sounded like. And this complex was built in the late 1980s. The wind started out of the east and then came out of the north. I just sat and watched as my hurricane screen was shredded. It's unbelievable. I was extremely fortunate to have sustained very little damage. Sharon says because she and her Jamaican churchgoers were all praying for me. So that's why I survived. But it was an experience. I would never do it again, but it worked out for the best.
One of the things we've learned about hurricanes is you always prepare for the worst, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And so prior to the storm, here at the clinic, we began to talk about evacuating and locking down the building as best we could, and retreating to a safe distance, which for my family and I ended up being the other side of the state, because I was on call that week and working Tuesday, realizing that all the hotels were full locally. And so we headed to Fort Lauderdale to weather the storm. The fire department as well, of course, removed their equipment off island for safety. We created a list of folks that told us that they were planning to stay through the storm. We encouraged them not to stay and reminded them that their doctor and their nurses and the clinic, the fire department, the police were all not going to be present. If they called 911 during the storm, there would be no one here to respond. But unfortunately, because of the late notification, a lot of folks chose to stay. We did our best to create a list, and we did. We created a list of about 43 people that were going to stay on the island. A lot of those were couples. A lot of those were folks that weren't really very mobile. They had limitations in how quickly they could react, such as people that were limited to using walkers or wheelchairs to get around easily. So it wasn't easy for them or their spouse to easily just jump in a car and go. And so unfortunately, a lot of those folks decided that they would just shelter in place. And so we, of course, were concerned about those folks, and we told them that we would do our best to check on them once the storm had passed, but would be evacuating. We did our best to prepare for the storm by creating a list of folks that had decided to stay on the island and shelter in place. I evacuated my family on Tuesday late in the day, and the storm then came through Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. CW said, "Hey Doc, you should be able to make it to the clinic. It looks like the lights are on there, and come on down." He didn't mention how deep the water was going to be, and so that was quite a surprise to see how much water. But thankfully, we have a big SUV, and the water was above the running boards, but didn't intrude into the vehicle or stall our engine as it had on several vehicles we found parked in the middle of the road. Well, that was part of the problem. You really couldn't see the road. It was like a waterway more than it was a roadway. And because of the loss of the markers, you couldn't really see where the ditch was. So unfortunately, some cars found their way into the ditch, into the deeper water, which then stalled their engines. We were able to make it back on island and through the water and back to the clinic. It was very eerily quiet. The sun was out, but of course devastation, trees down, condos without roofs, able to see into people's bedrooms as we first came on the island, on the condos on the north side. And as we came down to the clinic, I could hear the generator running, and came inside, the lights were on, a little bit of water in the floor in a few places due to a little shifting of the roof and a little water intrusion, but we quickly dried it up and realized, of course, we had no cell phone coverage, but we had power. We had no water, but we had power. And we then made our way south down to the Rebels' house where we live, and everything looked good. but somebody's roof was in my backyard. And at first I couldn't quite figure out whose roof was in my backyard and in my pool, and then realized as I got far enough away to see on the second floor, and with a little help from Rick Montgomery, who shot a little aerial video with his drone, the south side of my roof was gone, and that's whose roof was in our backyard. And so we got to work drying up inside the house, and grabbed some mattresses and brought them up here to the clinic and moved in. So it became the local hotel. For us, my wife and I took Dr. Irvin's old office over as our sleep room, and we moved another set of mattresses into another room for Dusty and Cheryl, because their house was basically a lake out in front of their house. Down along Belcher was standing water, and our girls stayed here as well. So we moved in for about a week, slept on the floor here at the clinic, and used 5-gallon buckets to fill the toilets to be able to flush them, and put the coffee on the next morning and let everybody know that, hey, we're going to keep the doors open, come and help yourself to the cold water. We filled up several coolers full of cold water, had coffee going every morning. We ran power cords out the 2 main doors so folks would be able to charge their golf carts and charge their electrical equipment and their Sawzall saws to work on clearing out, and went to work doing our best to support the community. And we had the normal amount of cuts and scrapes and a few fractures that we were able to manage with the equipment that we have here, and pass people up and keep them going. And we coordinated with CW and his crew at VMS, going house to house, keeping an eye on, checking through that list of patients that we had created prior to the storm to make sure that they were safe. And remarkably, thank goodness there was no surge, no storm surge. We didn't have any significant water on the island relative to down south. Luckily, we were able to primarily have just wind, and there were no deaths on the island, no serious injuries on the island, and we count ourselves quite fortunate.
When we saw Hurricane Ian coming up the coastline, you know, it was pretty obvious it was going to be a bad storm, one way or the other. We didn't know how bad it would be, which turned out to be less bad than we thought it was going to be. I was really watching the wind direction. The storm surge, of course, is what had us so worried. And by taking a look at North Naples and Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel and the areas that they get hit with the storm surge, you can see why that was so concerning. Storm surge is a terrible thing in a hurricane, and that was our biggest fear. I mean, I was confident that the place that we ended up staying on the island, which was a house on Banyan Street that had just been built by a good friend of mine, Justin Sexton, was built with all the latest hurricane codes, and it had 3 floors, and it actually had a pool on the first floor where we could use water because we knew the power would go out, and could still flush the toilets by bucketing water in toilets and things. So we were in a big, beautiful home that was just constructed with all the latest hurricanes floors, 3 floors. My brother had it listed as a for sale property, and the owner was kind enough to allow us to stay in it and keep an eye on it while the storm was coming. And so we made the call, we wrote it out, all things were good. And the next day, I got up at daylight, got on my golf cart, and the only thing I can really compare it to that some people may recognize is that scene in Apocalypse Now when Robert Duvall was on the beach and the helicopters are flying over and smoke's in the air and everything's happening and just chaotic around you, and you're just kind of trying to figure out what to do next. There was no fire department on the island that first morning. The firemen and all the police officers were mandatory evacuated, so we didn't see any of the fire department or the sheriff's department until about 9 a.m. or so, when they were finally able to get back on the island. So that first 2 or 3 hours after daylight, it was just craziness, just trying to run around trying to figure out where everybody was and who was safe and who we knew had stayed. couldn't get down any streets. Almost all the streets with any kind of tree line had been blocked. So you had to kind of pick and choose where you could get to, where you could go, and just do the best you could. At some point, I remember saw Captain Jeff Corkill, the Lee County Sheriff's Department, came on the island, followed by Dave, his deputy, when they first arrived on the island, and we stopped and talked to him, and I filled him in on what streets were closed and what streets that I couldn't get down and ones I could get down, and who we had seen and who was safe and who had checked in, that sort of thing. And we were talking about, well, it's going to be a while before any of these streets were going to be cleared, especially First Street. From Palm down to Widdens Marina was totally blocked, and it was also blocked from the other direction, coming from north to south. So we wanted to try to get to Widdens because we knew Sam Steyer had stayed at Widdens, and we wanted to check on Sam. We couldn't get to him, and David realized that there were some tractors at the county maintenance shed over by the ball field and now the dog park. So Jeff and David and I got in the truck. I got in the car with Jeff and David, and we went to the ball field and managed to get into the shed and get the keys to a tractor. David knew how to drive the tractor because we couldn't wait on anybody to clear the street. It was going to be days before they got the front end loaders out to clear the streets. So we needed to get down these streets immediately, and we didn't try to clear them all. So Jeff made the decision to get David on the tractor and get these streets open, and as best we could, at least to get the golf carts in and out and down and around, or at least a one lane where a car could get down it. So that's what we did for the next hour or so. Then we got what we could cleared up there, checked on Sam, he was fine. And then the next thing was we'd got wind that South Beach had been on fire. So we went down to South Beach, got Chief Blouser with the fire department, his crew, and Jeff and I, we all went down to the South Beach and checked on the remains, is all you can really say, of South Beach. It was burnt to the ground, still smoldering. Evidently a gas fire did that, and that was a gut check. We didn't like to see that. Of course, South Beach has always been a favorite of people on the island to go down and hang out. And then we just went on to the next issue. There was a gentleman that had a hand injury where he'd cut his hand, and he was wandering around trying to find the clinic. The clinic, of course, wasn't open. We found him. My brother got him some medical attention through the fire department there, and he turned out to be fine. Fuel was a big issue for generators after the second or third day, and of course we were out of power for almost 2 weeks. So fuel for generators turned out to be a big issue. Now, fortunately, through this particular event, I had a great friend of mine over at Lake Okeechobee who volunteered to bring over fuel by 55-gallon barrels because they didn't have any damage over near Lake Okeechobee, and another friend of ours had a fuel business over there, so he loaded up a horse trailer and rigged up a pump and was continuously bringing us fuel for the community when a lot of areas didn't have any fuel, couldn't get any fuel. He was bringing us 500-600 gallons of fuel a day, which we just distributed to the community. That was a big help. Mike Krause was his name, and he was above and beyond. Said he'd keep coming. He ended up doing 4 or 5 trips over here every other day, bringing us fuel, and he was a great help. It's amazing how the community came together. Everybody, too numerous to mention all the people that hung around for weeks after and just did whatever needed to be done. I was in the theater building and happened to look at that bronze statue that Emil Alzamora did about the community, and he captured it. It's just Boca Grande Embrace, I think is what it's called, and it's kind of what it is. Everybody loves the island, wants it to be special, and it is. So anyway,
It was an interesting storm. There's going to be another one. You can count on it. So we need to just prepare a little better. Cross our fingers, hope we stay lucky like we were this time, and soldier on.
My name is Chris Reeker, and I was president of the Boca Grande Women's Club during the unwelcome visit of Ian and the season of recovery from this catastrophic hurricane. I wrote a letter to my fellow members of our club's board of directors expressing my desire to initiate a Hurricane Ian recovery fund for individuals and businesses with an island connection. The intention of this was to model the fund after our previously successful COVID-19 relief fund. I was fortunate to get enough blips of cell and Wi-Fi signal that enabled me to text and email our board members with my request. The board enthusiastically supported this idea. Then I began reaching out to club members to recruit participants for this committee-administered fund. I was simply overjoyed when Julia Pierce, Julie Newell, Angela Steffen, and Vicki Winterer agreed to join me on this committee. Vicki was an especially integral part of this committee, as she had served on the previous COVID-19 Relief Fund committee and agreed to lead this new committee. I am grateful to Mary Hoffman, Meg Pierce, and Robbie Stanley for their assistance with these tasks. I also had several conversations with Chief C.W. Blosser during that time. One day, he informed me that prior to the storm, he had ordered a portable shower trailer for his staff to use after the storm. The shower trailer was going to be moved to the community center parking lot, and he would like the assistance of the Women's Club to make showers available to island residents and workers. I once again reached out to our board of directors, who happily agreed to pay for 500 free campground-style showers for anyone in need. Applications for the Hurricane Ian Recovery Fund were available on our club website and were posted at the entrance to the Boca Grande Fire Department. Chief Blosser allowed the Women's Club to attach a locked drop box at the entrance for submission of completed applications. I checked the box regularly and distributed the completed applications to my fellow committee members. This option was vital to those who did not have internet access after the storm. I would like to thank Sharon Cross for donating the drop box to the Women's Club. The Hurricane Ian Recovery Fund Committee met regularly throughout the season, and we processed 600 applications from individuals and businesses. Thanks to the incredible generosity of our community, over $1.5 million was donated to this fund and was distributed through grants to applicants with an island connection. Over 260 businesses and individuals donated to this fund, and it serves of an example of how the Boca Grande community supports one another in a time of need. Hurricane Ian drastically changed the physical appearance of the Gasparilla Island, but it could not dampen the light of our community spirit, which continues to shine brightly. Boca Grande Woman's Club was honored to be able to assist the greater Boca Grande community in this way, and we will continue to do so because improving our community is and has been part of our mission for almost 75 years.
My family's been coming to Boca Grande for more than 50 years, and my husband, Tom Wilcox, and I have owned property for 37. During that time, we've seen a little bit of everything, beginning with any number of serious storms, starting with Charlie back in 2004, which obviously did a lot of damage to the island, and we had damage to our home at that time. But there was no preparation for what happened during Hurricane Ian. Ironically, we were traveling internationally when the Weather Channel started reporting what was going on in the Gulf of Mexico. And in our group traveling were several others with Florida homes. We remained glued to the Weather Channel on the 28th, watching with horror as we saw the storm get closer and closer to Boca Grande. I think part of the hard part about being away and out of touch was trying to sort through rumors from fact. We had people go and look at our condos saying the windows were all gone and that furniture was a mess. And also stories about Whiddens being in the water and South Beach burning to the ground. And so much of this was not accurate. And after a while, we decided, okay, who are reliable sources? Who are the people to go to? And interestingly enough, Island TV, with all its video and all its coverage gave us a sense of, okay, this is reality. We couldn't come back to our condo right away. There was enough damage that we had to relocate temporarily in Baltimore. But 2 weeks after the storm, we came down to do our own assessment and talk about a shock. The trees, the vegetation, the damage, the 20-foot piles of trash and people's possessions and children's toys, and it was heart-rending. And as I said, we suffered damage, but nothing like losing our entire home or seeing all our valued photographs and personal possessions in a dump heap outside our property. You know what else was really hard was realizing, Boca Grande is resilient and people jump to the fore, providing food and showers and all kinds of comfort, singing that phrase, Boca Grande strong. But drive off the island, and even as you left the island, it was easy to see that people's lives were going to be transformed forever. And that was disheartening. I knew that we would be able to rebuild. We were fortunate to have the resources and the people to help us out. But what about Fort Myers Beach? What about parts of Punta Gorda? What about Fort Myers? It was heartbreaking to see the shrimp boats in southern Florida near Fort Myers Beach. I'm really honored to be part of the Boca Grande Historical Society, and one of our prime efforts is to really record history as it's happening so that we can show future generations just what we've gone through during the good times and the challenging times. Yes, Boca Grande is going to survive. Now, 5 months later, there are still numerous signs. Driving down Gulf Boulevard at night, it still astonishes me at how many buildings have no lights on at night. We were able to find a couple of week shelter in a friend's townhouse or guest house here on the island. During that time, we could watch the slow but steady progress on our home and also do what we could through various donations and commitments to help others. And I think of all the lessons that have come out of this experience, it's the extent to which people are there for one another and help with all kinds of giving tendencies or all kinds of giving efforts to make sure that everybody, you know, like a rising tide, all boats, all people need to be helped and raised back up after a tragedy that we've gone through.